Every year, more than 1 billion tons of unspoiled food is thrown away, while millions of people around the world struggle with cruel hunger. What if this waste were their only hope for survival? This is a rather shocking scenario, but not surprising. Because in Manila, the capital of the Philippines, in the shadow of luxury skyscrapers, there is a world where this harsh reality exists. Tondo. This is Manila's largest slum. Here we will encounter what is perhaps the world's most unusual food, which is the staple food source for thousands of people, Pagpag. So what is it? In Tondo, Pagpag is not just a meal, it is a way of life. The term, which literally means trash, actually refers to food that has been shaken and cleaned of dust. So, what does it consist of? Fried chicken, French fries, hamburgers, and even pasta leftovers thrown away from fast food restaurants. These foods are collected by the local community, carefully cleaned and recooked into a meal. For the local community, this method, Pagpag, is not only cheap and filling, but also surprisingly delicious. In fact, it is the most popular dish in Manila's slum neighborhoods. The story of Pagpag begins at the doors of famous fast food chains in Manila. At popular restaurants such as Jollibee and McDonald's, meals that are a treat for those who can afford them are often left half-eaten. When customers leave their tables, these uneaten pasta and chicken leftovers, still edible, are thrown into the nearest trash containers by restaurant staff. From this point on, a completely different life cycle begins. The city's trash trucks collect these containers, which contain kilograms of food waste, and transport them to the trash disposal site in Tondo. What we all simply call trash is, for those who live there, nothing less than life itself, even happiness. When night falls, the streets of Tondo take on a rather dangerous atmosphere. But this doesn't bother the garbage pickers, known as pak. Thousands of pak carefully sort through the food scraps in the bags until the first light of dawn. They are very happy when they find a piece of chicken that is slightly larger than usual. Of course, humans aren't the only ones searching for food in these areas. Rats and dogs also show a great deal of interest in these trash piles every night. However, the real danger lies not in these items, but in the shabu addicts who live in this area. They typically use a drug that is a mixture of methamphetamine and caffeine. After a certain period of time, they become dazed and aggressive, and may use the syringes they have previously used to harm others, posing a threat or risk of robbery. For this reason, packs must not only collect food, but also carefully dismantle and collect useful recyclable materials like plastic and metal using cutting tools. In other words, every new day for packs is a story of survival. But what if the food they collect is spoiled? Won't they get poisoned? This is where garbage collectors come in. They try to minimize the risk of poisoning by giving food with air bubbles or spoiled food to families who feed pigs. On the other hand, it is not uncommon to find gold or money among these piles of trash. Those who are lucky enough to find such treasures are happier because they can provide a better life for their families, even if only for a short time. I understood the reason for their happiness better when I walked around the streets of Tondo and faced the stark reality of poverty. For it is impossible not to face this reality while wandering the streets of Tondo. This place seems to be separated from the rich and crowded part of Manila by a wall. The houses here are usually 1 or 2 stories high, and most of them don't even have windows. The streets are narrow and labyrinthine, making it difficult not to get lost. The people who live here are so poor that they can only cover their roofs with metal sheets. Yet if you look a few kilometers beyond this bleak landscape, you can easily see the tall skyscrapers of Manila's wealthy neighborhoods. In the city, 2 completely different lifestyles exist side by side. The wealthy rarely venture into these neighborhoods as they view them as dangerous. Of course, food and money are not the only things lacking for those living in Tondo. Infrastructure problems are also a major issue. Complex and illegal wiring systems pose a risk of electric shock, while the lack of a proper sewage system causes sewage to flow through the streets, creating a foul odor. People have become so accustomed to this situation that while we are bothered by the smell, they continue their daily routines without any issues. I noticed that many shacks had no electricity. People usually light their homes with portable lamps. The rooms are extremely small. The same room is used for both cooking and sleeping. As the temperature is above 30 degrees, people usually prefer to sleep half naked. The situation of children is even more depressing. Most are weak and frail due to malnutrition. They cannot go to school or receive an education. Some are even forced to beg in wealthy neighborhoods. The poverty and struggle for survival in Tondo is like an Oscar-worthy drama film. So after all this dangerous and difficult process, how do they turn the garbage they collect into delicious food? Let's take a look at this process. First, they empty the food leftovers from the bags into a large container filled with water and wash them thoroughly with their bare hands. The most important tip here is to use hot water. This way, they can remove any possible germs from the chicken. Additionally, they rinse the bags at least twice to remove any metal and plastic residues. When the water begins to turn gray, the first cleaning stage is complete. The second stage begins with transferring the washed Pagpag to a large pot. Then liquid oil, soy sauce, and even Sprite and monosodium glutamate are added to the pot to enrich the flavor. This ingredient, commonly known as Chinese salt, is recognized for its appetite-stimulating properties. Many locals say it adds a unique flavor to Pagpag. After the additions are made, the Pagpag is stirred for another half hour until it is fully prepared. It is then served like soup in fast food restaurants or fried. They do this both to feed themselves and to make a living. Some locals say they initially sold traditional Filipino dishes like adobo, but over time, they started cooking Pagpag because customers couldn't afford the real thing. A family of 5 living in Tondo can enjoy dinner or Pagpag for only 50 Philippine pesos. This is equivalent to approximately $1. Considering that this meal is enough to feed a family of 5, the price is extremely reasonable, even unbelievable, given the poverty conditions. In fact, thanks to the sale of Pagpag, people are able to cover their electricity and water bills and purchase basic necessities like rice. But collecting Pagpag is not as easy as you might think. Sometimes people wait until midnight and still find nothing. This is because garbage trucks are not always full of food scraps. Although small businesses try to serve the millions of people living below the poverty line in Manila and help them survive, this is often not enough. Today, the $1 that most of us don't think much of determines the fine line between survival and starvation in Tondo. Pagpag, which we all see as just another type of food, actually represents hope, life, and struggle. The people living in the shadow of the glittering skyscrapers in Tondo may not be able to afford real food for their children and families. Some may even have never eaten anything other than Pagpag in their entire lives. However, all these hardships, all these impossibilities cannot erase the warm smile on their faces. They are so warm-hearted, so optimistic, that they seem to spread joy around them. If you look more closely at their faces, you will understand even better that this happiness cannot be bought with money or wealth. Actually, that's partly why I wanted to make this documentary. To understand the value of what we have and to be grateful for it. Because we are definitely luckier than millions of people around the world. But how much do we appreciate that? To be honest, I wonder how you will look at your plates after watching this documentary. with gratitude or hunger.